Hello everyone. Now we'll finally start working with Pulumi in this video. But first I want to show you a few changes that I made as compared to the previous videos. So I've commented this part and I've added a redirect instead of render. And I've also commented this line because it wasn't needed. Now that redirect part basically renders home page, but I didn't want to mix authentication with the rendering of home page, so I created a separate route for this. So this is the home page wala route. Now, and this is the one. Okay. So I'll just show you the home page. It looks like it looks like this, and I've changed the contents of the home page, which I'll show you. So this is the content. It has a table. Okay. You can simply copy paste this code from my GitHub. I didn't want to waste time coding all of this. Now let's start with Pulumi. As you may have noticed, I have a pulumi.yaml file. Now this name, it can be anything, okay, it doesn't matter. And runtime, and it's pretty basic. It's nothing. And then we have pulumi.demo.yaml, which is empty. Now I'll show you what it is. So in Pulumi, we need to have an organization, and under that organization, you can have various different stacks. Now, an organization can be named anything, like let's say pre-hosting or YouTube, anything you want to. Now, that organization contains stacks. By stack, a Pulumi means that it is like a collection of resources. So all your AWS S3 buckets, all your ECS, Fargate services, all the ARNs and all the resources of log groups, target groups, etc. All of this will be stored under that stack. So once you, if anything changes, let's say you create an S3 bucket, and then you delete that bucket from AWS, so it will get reflected in your stack as well, in your Pulumi stack. Or if you delete something from Pulumi stack, it will get reflected in your AWS account as well. So it happens both ways. So that's the stack. But before we start working with stack, we need to create an organization. So in order to create an organization, you need to come to app.pulumi.com and log in. So I've logged in using GitHub, and then you can create an organization. So this is an organization I've already created, an organization named YouTube, or you can create a new organization. So simply add your name, agree, and then create. Okay. So I won't be creating a new one. But once you have created an organization, now the next step is to set it as default. So for that, you can make use of Pulumi set Pulumi org set default and the name of the organization. So YouTube. I've already set it as default, so it doesn't matter. And then you have to create a stack. So in order to create a new stack, you can write Pulumi stack init, and it will ask you for the name of the stack. In my case, I'd just type demo. Okay. I think I'll get an error because I've already created this stack. Yeah. Okay. No problem. But yeah, this is the way to create a new stack. Now, once you have your stack and organization ready, the next step is to add some config bars. So Pulumi config set. Now you have to set your AWS region. In my case, it's not. Europe North 1. You see, we get this config in this file automatically. So yeah, now let's start working with the static part. Okay. Okay, so before we start with the functions, just make sure that you create two empty folders named user app and user app static. User app is for the web services and user app static is for the static sites. So when we'll fetch contents from the GitHub repository in the form of a zip file, we'll upload it in these folders and then we'll subsequently extract those contents and work on them. So firstly, I'll just show you a message function. So it's basically the rendering of the message.egs page. This is the page. It's a simple HTML page where I just say that it will take around these many minutes to host the service. Okay. So yeah, that's it. And this is the function. This is a static site. I don't think it actually matters if I'm not making use of this user data. So let me just comment that. Okay. So what we're trying to do in this function is we'll be hosting static.egs and then send all the repositories of the logged in user. So as you can see from the API that we are fetching all the repositories and then this is the response which I'm sending in this static.egs page, static site.egs. Now the state new means that I'll be hosting a new static site. I'll just show you the page. So if state is update, then show this HTML. If state is not update, so just show all of this. The only difference in these two is this part, repo.forEach. So if I'm hosting a new static site, I'll be able to see all my repositories. If I'm editing a static site, so I won't be able to see all my repositories. Instead, I'll be able to see the repository that was hosted, right? So that's the part. So this is what static site function does. Another is host static site. Now this is the main, not exactly the main, but yeah, it's important because we are fetching the repo contents, extracting the zip file, then deleting that particular zip file, and sending all this data to this Pulumi static function, which is the Pulumi function. Okay. So firstly, I'm making sure that this user app static folder is empty. Okay, before I actually fetch the contents from GitHub. I didn't fetch the contents from the repository, right? I only fetch the names of the repository here. Now, in this function, we'll actually fetch the contents of that particular selected repository and branch. So, this is the part. We have the repo and the branch, and this is the API. So, we'll get some response, and then I'm making use of request and writing that zip file inside that folder, inside the user app static folder. And then I'm making use of extract to extract the zip file, deleting the zip file, and then finally reading it. So if like when you extract a zip file, okay, so initially you had bootstrap.zip, you extracted it, now you have the contents and you have the folder named bootstrap.zip, and then you have a file named bootstrap.zip, right? So you deleted the zip file, but now you also have an extra folder called bootstrap.zip. You'll understand this more when you'll actually, try this out. So I'm just making sure that I delete that extra folder. Okay, that's it. It's not an important, it's not very difficult to understand. You will understand this when you try this out. So I'm just deleting that extra folder, and that's it. Then I'm redirecting it to the message route. The message was that page. This is the page, that it will take around 5 to 10 minutes to host the service. So that's the page. And then now this part is very important. So what I'm actually doing here is I'm sending title, GitHub ID, repo, and state in the name of the folder that that is present inside user app static. Now why I'm doing is, so it's renamed and that's it. So the reason I'm doing this is because we can't send it inside this function. Like I can't send GitHub ID and then state and whatever title. I can't do that. Pulumi functions don't work if you send any arguments inside them. So you better like, I mean, you can also make use of cookies here, but then you will also have to send request object, right? So again, then it won't work. I think it's the best if you add this inside the name of the folder itself, and then you can get the name of the file and then not extract, like fetch the names, fetch these things from the file name itself. Now this is the Pulumi static function. Finally, we are going to work with Pulumi. So you see I have declared a few variables here where file path is this path. Now I'll split the file name and then I'll fetch all these details from the file name. Title, GitHub ID, state, and repo. Now this is important. This is the name of the bucket and this is the index document. Now make sure that you write index.html, okay? You can't give a path like public slash index.html or something else. It won't work. And this index.html has to be present in the root path. It can't be present inside any folder. And this is public access block. And this is the public read policy for bucket. So basically, you can change this policy, but as of now, I'm keeping it public. Now, you may think that the bucket policy variable is grayed out because it's not being used. So, why am I actually creating it? Now, the moment you make use of new and then something else, so it's automatically created, okay? Whether or not you make use of this variable somewhere else, but once you initialize it using some new and something, so it works. It will get created. So you don't have to worry about this. Now, one thing I want to share is if, let's say, I write console.log site bucket, dot id, right? What do you think should get printed? The id? The id won't get printed here. You get a Pulumi output as promised. And that's because uh, all of this infrastructure is getting allocated, is getting created in the backend, right? So unless and until it gets created, you won't be able to fetch the ID of the same. So that's why you'll get a promise as an output. Pulumi promise. But you still want the ID, you want to save it inside the database. So how will you do it? So there you'll make use of dot apply, the way I did it here. Dot apply. So I wanted to print website endpoint. So I wrote site bucket dot website endpoint dot apply and then this. So inside this I have printed website endpoint. You can do it the same way. Now this is important. We can't upload folders to S3 bucket. We have to upload each file and then we can add the folder. Okay. So add object to S3 is a recursive function. So this is the function. So if the data is a folder, I'm declaring an index variable, and then this is the index. If it is not a folder, then this key is initially empty, okay? And af- key is like the path, Like let's say I have a folder assets, and inside assets I have CSS, and then uh, something.css file. So index will in that case index will be asset slash, and then it will go into this function again. Then CSS is a folder, so it will become asset slash CSS slash, right? And then it will go into this function again, and then it will become asset slash CSS slash styles.css. So that's how it works. Now, if it's not a directory, so it will come into this, and this is the name of the object. It has to be unique. You have to think about this, okay? Make sure it is unique. Key plus item is a unique pair already, but in order to make it more unique, you can add the file name. And the file name is the file path. And I'll just confirm. No, file path, file name is the last. File name is the GitHub ID and the title. So yeah, it's unique, right? Everyone will have their own set of titles in GitHub ID. So yeah, you can make it more unique by adding this, or you can make use of date, time, or random values that can be generated. So whatever suits you, you can do that. And this is the code. So yeah, that's it. So this is important. You can't upload folders to S3. You have to make use of a recursive function. And lastly, if it's a new, if it's a new static site, add it inside the GitHub repository. Sorry, add it inside the database. So yeah, that's it. Let's see if it works. But before that, you need to install a few packages. These are the packages, and as well as mine. I've already installed it, so I'll just skip. And also, once you have installed these packages, make sure you run Pulumi up once. Up is short for update, so Pulumi update or Pulumi up. Just make sure you run it once so that the stack gets updated, and then you can simply run node server.js. This is the static site.ejs page. Let's write static one. Let's click on submit and see what exactly happens in VS Code. So we got the console output, right? And just check this out. User app static. So we got all the contents and it got renamed. So this is the new name, but it has static one as the title, some and the GitHub ID, repository, and state is new. Let's click on this. Okay, we haven't got anything yet. Looks like it got created. Let's refresh. Cool. Yeah, you'll get this, but it only means that it's still working. It's still allocating all the resources in the backend. So let's just wait for 1 or 2 minutes and it should work. Yeah, so we were able to get the static site. Cool. So in the next video, we'll finally host a new web service, and the editing part is pretty similar to the hosting part, hosting a new static site. It's just that you just have to replace the contents. That's all. So yeah, see you in the next one, and we'll finally host a new web service.